Speaker tonight is Bill S. from Idyllwild.
Good evening, everybody. I'm alcoholic. My name is Bill. And I say it that way because I think it's a lot more important that you know that I'm alcoholic than you know that I'm Bill. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous as the fortunate victim of an Al-Anon plot. My wife had been going off on Tuesday nights to this church. I thought it was great. She was gone all night on Tuesday night, and so I could drink at home the way that I wanted to drink in my house, you know. And it was an Al-Anon meeting. I didn't know that. I just thought she was off at a church, and she was getting happier, so I just kind of thought everything was cool. You know? And little did I know. She came home one day after about 6 months of attending these meetings, and interesting thing about this, she'd gone to this church on a Sunday, and walked into the church. And I'm not a church dude at all. I used to refer to it as the C word, you know. So she walked in on this Sunday morning, and this minister saw her walking by, and he saw the pain on her face and read it and knew what her problem was. Me, you know, not really, but his wife had been the leader of the Al-Anon meeting at that particular church for 10 years or so, and he was a member of this fellowship. However, it was a really large Christian denomination in Orange County, and he couldn't go to local meetings because it wouldn't look really good for the pastor of a growing church to be going to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. He should be getting what he was getting at church, see. So he was driving outside the area 30 miles and being real incognito to be a member of our fellowship. And anyway, he recognized what was going on with her and suggested that she go to a meeting on a Tuesday night. And so she did. And so there she was for 6 months, and I was drinking at home and just enjoying the hell out of it, you know. And at that time in my life, I was engineering sound for KLON radio and the blues cruises out of Long Beach and San Pedro, and doing some stuff. And she had been fed up. She got fed up with me, and on one particular morning, she started bitching at me while I was in the shower. Different bitching than what you're talking about. and I was still in the shower, and I said, just, quiet down, just stop it, just go to work, get out of here. Well, she did, but she'd been indoctrinated by those Al-Anons, and she decided that in leaving, she was going to take my keys off of my keychain so that I wouldn't have access to my house. And she also, before I had time that morning, she was a banker at the time, and she went and changed all the access that I had to my money. So I went down to get some money, and actually the first thing I walked out of the house, and like I was still in a stupor, and you guys know the stupor I'm talking about, and good morning, and I shut the door behind me, and I went, crap, I forgot my briefcase, and it had the port that I was supposed to meet the boat at in the briefcase, and I hadn't bothered to look at it, so because I had it in my briefcase, I didn't need it yet. So I went to get on my keychain and recognized that I was locked out of my own house. Well, that pissed me off. And so I went over to a friend's house, and he was a good shoulder to cry on. I'd known his family since I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. So I went over there, and the first thing we did was have a couple of shots to get mellowed out. It was 8:30 or 9 in the morning, and got my act together, and I decided that the best thing for me to do is just drive down to one of the landings and see if the boat was taking off from there. And so I'd get up. Well, I showed up, and the program director for KLON Radio, Steve Barker, noticed I wasn't walking real well when I got there, and it was about 10 in the morning, and I started helping with the equipment, and he looked at me and said, "Billy, you're not engineering sound today." I said, "What are you talking about, man?" He goes, "You're not in any shape to be engineering these guys. They've come all the way across the country to be on this boat and go around. I want you to be a roadie today. I want you to just carry stuff. Be a beast of burden." Yeah. I was already lit. So I grabbed him by the collar, and I started running him. I was going to throw him in the bay. And I let go of him just before I would have thrown him in the water. And I said, "Stephen, what's KLON stand for? Colon? Yes, well, you know." And I just had to give him a piece of my mind. He deserved it, you know. And anyway, that was the way my morning started. And I found out that I was out of my house and I didn't have any money. And then I got fired off the boat that I was working on. So that was the beginning of the weekend for me. And that was after 10 years of marriage. So this wasn't like a first time kind of thing, you know. This was like a long time of me pushing the limits and not knowing anything about what the right thing to do. I mean, I didn't care. I started off in the music industry. This is to digress just a moment to get you here. I started off in the music industry in my first job for a living was mid-February of 1963. For a living, I was a young saxophone player, and at the time, surf bands were really popular. The Beatles hadn't been here yet. Yeah, I'm old, and did you hear that? So I got hired on as a sax player to work with all these surf bands, and so the guys that I got to hang around with were like 22 to 29 years old, and I was the guy that they came and picked me up at my parents' house and with my sax, you know. And I got to go, you know, show up at a gig in a '59 Chevy with some cool people, walk in, play sax, say hi to some chicks that wouldn't think, you know, twice about me, and that was the gig. So a few years into this, I recognized that you couldn't act out if you were a sax player, because if you got in a fight and you were a sax player, you get your lip busted up, you couldn't play. But if you were a singer, you could sing with a fat lip, and so I became the singer in the band. And, there's always angles, you know. And we got a little local notoriety, and early 1967, an artist manager that had been handling a local nightclub put a group together with me and a drummer and bass player that I was with, and another couple of guys from other groups locally, and we started a group that ended up a year later signing with Columbia Records, and we toured with Three Dog Night and Alice Cooper and Iron Butterfly and Hendrix and Led Zeppelin, and you know, all the people back then playing as an opening act and sharing stages with those guys, and dressing rooms, and drugs, and some chicks, and at the end of 1969, I decided I didn't want to be involved in that stuff anymore. I was getting involved with the love-in, that kind of thing. So I grew my hair down to my butt and did a folk music album, and and that was real cool. It was a lot of fun. I came back into town, and one of the groups that I toured through Canada and the East Coast, and then one of the groups that was my opening act for, 28 shows, Alice Cooper, was headlining at the Palladium when I came back into town, and I went, maybe I made a mistake. And I've been making noise and effort to try to get back in that direction ever since. So you never know when the door's open, you gotta keep it going. So that gets me back to the wife locking me out of the house. I had an idea that I wanted to get back to playing and stuff, but I needed some kind of home base to do that, and I really didn't have a band going on, and I didn't have any, and I didn't have an act worked up and that kind of stuff. So the wife came home and she said, you're a drunk. I've been going to these Al-Anon meetings, and you're an alcoholic, and you really ought to go see those people. And so I said, okay, I'll go down there. I'll go down there, and I'm just going to show you that I'm not one of them. I walked in here on September 6th of 1992 to prove to my wife that I wasn't one of you, and she was sitting at home at that time. She was praying that I was going to meet a bigger bullshitter than me. Ta-da! I met I was sitting at this table, and I only said I was alcoholic because the second time I ever said that I was alcoholic. The first time I was asked to be a guest speaker at a college course, the history of rock and roll in Orange County, and it was held at the old El Toro Marine Base in the theater over there. Irvine Valley College was the vehicle, and the class was getting real popular, so they moved it on to the Marine Base. Anyway, I was asked to go to the podium, and I was asked to come down and talk, and by the instructor, knew a little bit about my history, and said, sure, I'll go talk. And so I showed up, and I had, 3 or 4 beers in me, and I brought one of the roadies from that time with me to back me up. Come on, Kevin, tell him. It was really fun, wasn't it? And then I was sitting over at the side, and I realized that I was going to get up in front of this group of people. I didn't have a mic. I didn't have a guitar. I didn't have any props. I didn't have anything to break the edge. All of a sudden, I got nervous. I was like, what the hell are you going to do? And there were 250 people in the room, and I walked up to this little mic, no podium, which isn't a mic stand, and I walked up and I said, hi, my name's Bill. I'm an alcoholic. and the instructor yelled out from the back, Bill, wrong meeting. And everybody laughed, and then it was okay, But that's the only other time I'd ever said it. So I was sitting in this meeting down to prove to my Al-Anon wife, Al-Anon from hell wife, that I wasn't one of you. And here's this guy sitting at the end of the table. I'm down here. He's down there. It goes around the table. Everybody goes, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm alcoholic. Da-da-da. I said, hi, my name's Bill. I'm alcoholic. And that came out of my mouth. And it was like, that's weird. I was just trying to fit in. You know, I just didn't want to stand out in the crowd. I didn't realize that if you go to a club, an AA club, everybody knows who's the new people. You're the only one that doesn't know, you know. They could smell you walking in. It's like, you know, it's kind of like the sponsored dance. Those of you who are sponsors know that when somebody has heard enough or heard the right thing from you, that as they develop the courage to come up and ask you to help them, there's this funny little thing that they do that they get kind of all nervous and shuffle and stuff. You know, that's that kind of thing. It's a dead giveaway. And so anyway, I said, yeah, hi, I'm Bill. I'm alcoholic, and then I sat and like I heard all these other people, and they were like Charlie Brown's teacher. We're like, I couldn't hear a thing anybody said, man. And there was this guy, there was this fat Irish guy with a ponytail at the end of at the end of the table, and that guy opened his mouth and talked, and I knew what had happened. My wife called this guy and told him what to say, so that I'd stay there, you know. I felt pretty interested that day, and I did my first dastardly AA thing. I'd showed up for that meeting to prove to my wife that I wasn't one of you with a capital OO, and I had money in my pocket. But I wasn't going to spend it at your meeting, you know. It was money for booze, you know. But good alcoholic's not going to have a stash in it. And the lady that was the secretary treasurer for that meeting announced during her announcements, if anybody at the meeting would like to have a book, we'll give you one until you can afford one. So I lied and I told her I didn't have any money because I wanted to take a look at the book, because that guy had said some stuff that really made sense to me, you know. I went home that night and I started reading the book, and I read about the guy who builds up this wonderful, promising future, gets everything right up to the point where he's going to cash in, and then craps all over it. You know? And I went, wow, I've done that 30 times. How'd these guys know about me? You know? How'd they have any idea about me? And so I came back. I came back the next day. In fact, I'd been working for this concert engineer. I had a desk and it was my cover for my desk, my doily, if you will, was a Coors Light banner, you know, from one of the shows that we'd worked. I had a drawer off to the left that was like, it had wood rot so bad from the sweat off of my beers that had been in it that you couldn't put anything in it any longer. That would fall through, you know. And anyway, so I decided I was going to take a couple weeks off from that and just see what you guys had to offer and just hang around what you did. So I went to that club every day for a couple of weeks, and you know, I knew that the guy that I was working for at the concert thing was an asshole. I just knew it. You know? And so I hear all of a sudden now I'm 2 weeks without a drink in me. And I showed back up at this place, and I talked to the guy for a few minutes, and I realized that I was right. He was really an asshole. So I quit. And I went off and found other employment. But I had the courage to do so because I was clear-minded, and something was going on. You know, I hadn't really asked somebody to help me yet. I just showed up every day, and all the Charlie Brown teacher people were saying whatever they said, and this one guy every day said what he was saying, and it just cut through everything. What he said in meetings just rang clear and rang true right through me. And it was about 2 months had gone by, and I realized that I hadn't had a thought about having a drink. I wasn't trying not to drink. I wasn't doing anything except showing up to do this work. Just to show up and talk and listen to you guys interact and feel the feeling that happens in a meeting, you know. And I hadn't had a thought about having a drink. It was really weird. Because just to backtrack and let you know how I drank, I owned a music store in the city of Whittier, and I dropped my kids off at school, and I'd run over to the liquor store, and I'd get 2 little baby blue 100 proof Smirnoff vodkas and 2 wine coolers, and I'd have those down before I got out of the parking lot, just so that I got the snap on. And then I would drive the 22 miles to my office, where I had a bag of white South American Bisquick and a bar in my office. But I'd have to have that before I got there, and I'd have to have that just to get the stamina. I don't know what it is, the balance to drive the 22 miles to get there. And then I got to the point where I had to get a primer. And for those of you that maybe you know what a primer is. You buy really lousy, cheap booze because you know you're going to puke the good ones. So you put the bad stuff down first, so that when you're done puking, now you're going to keep the good stuff down. You know, that's where I was at. So, you know, I'm not a teetotaler. This guy that I was talking to, and just loved what he had to say. He'd get done with the meetings, and he'd stand outside of the club, and 4 or 5 guys would come over and talk, and he'd say a couple of things. And he was like E.F. Hutton. Everybody just hung out and listened to what this guy had to say, because what he had to say was always like right on the money. It just rang true. It was pure and straight at the disease of alcoholism, the mental part of it. It was always directed right at how you thought. And so one day I came up to him. I said, "Steve, you know, I'm looking for a sponsor." I heard these meetings that I'd gone to. That I heard that there was, you know, people sponsored people, and he said, "Well, you know, that guy over there. I think that guy over there. He's done the steps, and I think that guy over there's done the steps, and there's a guy over there." You know, I'm saying, "Oh, wow." When he talks, he sounds really intelligent, but he's really stupid. I mean, he should have picked right up on that, you know. And so a couple days went by, and I did the same thing. I kept hinting around to this guy, and he wasn't biting. He just would not bite. And so I figured out what was going on. I thought about it very deeply for a while, and so I recognized what was going on. Either he was really stupid, or he hated my guts. That's what I came up with. I said, "You know what? I can't understand anything that any of these other people in this place are saying. I want that guy to help me get whatever he's got. But I don't know how to get, he's just not catching on. So maybe I'll just ask him. I'll just come up and just ask him outright. Come on, man." So I did the sponsor dance. And and I came up to him and I said, "Steve, would you be my sponsor?" He looked at me in the face like this warm, loving thing in his face. He said, "Billy, I'd love to be your sponsor." Then I got pissed. I said, "What the hell did you allow me to run around you for the last week, 10 days, circling you like a dope?" And he looked at me, and then he got bright red in the face, and he goes, "You didn't friggin' ask." That was it. It was my first lesson. in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know. Mickey Bush is a speaker up in the LA area, and he says that the word ASK is an acronym for Ass Saving Kit. You know? And there are numerous places in the book where it mentions ask God this, ask God this, ask God this. It's pray, man. It doesn't, you know, if you're like me, I came in here and I couldn't say the C word. I didn't want to hang around anybody that did the God stuff. It was like lame. I thought, you know, I'd been, on my way here, I'd been dunked, dipped, sprinkled, had hands laid on me, tongues talked on me. All this stuff had gone on, and every experience left me thirsty. I needed something else, you know. So I came up to this guy, Steve. He's still my sponsor today. He's had a heart transplant. He's gone all over the world, and he's still my sponsor today. The guy always touched me with just love and concern and openness. He would never, ever, ever offer me anything advice-wise that I didn't ask for, ever. Even if he knew I was walking into an ambush. You know, you hang around AA clubs, you're going to walk into an ambush. Because if you're talking about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous at a place where people are doing the just hanging around and going to meetings, and you're talking about the program and what you have to do to stay sober, if you've got the disease I got, I live in Idyllwild, and I live 75% of the time in Idyllwild, and the other 25% I live between my ears here in a place I call the Hell Cube. You know. And this program has given me tools to deal with what goes on in here, recognize that it's pretty common with people that have the same malady as me. But if you take that information to a place where you might have a bunch of hard drinkers hanging around that are still cucumbers, and they're giving information away to people that are pickles and killing people because they're not like me. You know, you give that information away at a club, and you're going to get ambushed somewhere. You know, emotionally, and my sponsor came to me one day, and he said, let's have lunch at the Crab Cooker down in Newport Beach. Let's go to a meeting at the Costa Mesa Club, and then let's go, you know, have lunch in the Crab Cooker. I said, that's good, let's do it. So we're sitting at the Crab Cooker, and in the middle of the meal, he's asking me questions about the family, about my sons, about the wife, about the new house. And he says, oh, by the way, Billy, I got to go back to Kansas City next month. I'm having a little procedure. I said, oh, really? How long are you going to be gone? He goes, well, I don't quite know yet. The procedure, you know, they haven't given me the final result in this thing yet. And I said, what exactly procedure are you having, Steve? And he said, well, they found out. You remember when I came back from the South Pacific and I had water coming up. I was vomiting some water and stuff. One of the valves in my heart's bad, and I have to have my heart replaced. It's over lunch at the Crab Cooker, you know. It's like, this is the guy that saved my life, you know, because I could hear him. And the way that he saved my life was he was sick enough to let somebody help him, you know. And so on and so on, you know. Anyway, he only stayed on the subject for about 3 minutes, and then he went back and asked how I was doing, and how's your wife, and how's, you know. It was like, you know, you kind of hate people like that. They're just such great examples of this program. It's like, God damn it, you make it tough for me, you know. I don't get to screw around. I don't get to have any fun. You got all this. You do all the right crap, you know. And he went back and had his heart transplant in Kansas City, and he's now like a poster boy for heart transplants, you know. So he goes out and speaks at those things too, you know. And if they need a non-denominational spiritual speaker, he'll go out and talk. You know, he'll talk at a religious meeting about AA stuff, but not say it's AA and get it across to people. You know. He's just one of those guys, and you know, I'm very blessed to have stumbled across him, and you know, maybe it was my wife's prayer. I don't know who the hell she prayed to, and it doesn't matter to me. The sponsor, when I first got here, he asked me if I was gonna do my prayers that night, and I said, "I'm sorry, man. I've been through all these experiences. I'm not interested in prayer. You can take it and shove it. Not interested." He goes, "Okay." He goes, "Let's open the book." And he grabs the 12 and 12, and he opens to page 41 in the 12 and 12. And he goes, right here on page 41, you see what it says here? It says, in all times of emotional disturbance or indecision, you can pause, ask for quiet, and in the stillness, simply say these words. He said, "Can you say these words?" I said, "Yeah, I can say those words." You know? And he said, "Well, okay." I said, "Don't tell me I'm praying." He says, "It doesn't say to pray, it says say these words. Can you say these words?" And that's how the thing began for me, you know. All times of emotional disturbance or indecision. What's happened, you know, this isn't something for me that I was shooting for. You know, it talks in the big book about the guy that Roland was approached in the hospital by two men who had known a spiritual experience, and by example, by direction from my sponsor, I used the Serenity Prayer in a time of emotional disturbance. He said, you know, the second step doesn't say, "I already believed something, I cleaned it up and made it better," and went on. It says, "I came to believe that something would change." How do you do that? He said, "I know how you do stuff. You do stuff through experience. It's an experiential program. It isn't what I think, it isn't what I believe, it's what I do, and the experience I get from doing." And I took one opportunity to insert a serenity prayer, a group of them, maybe 3 or 4, in a situation where my mind was just, I was gonna blow a circuit. I'd gone from calm to madman, bright red face, gonna run some sucker off the freeway because he looked like a guy that ripped me off. You know, maybe you're not that crazy. I am. And the information that I got from him to insert, you know, Serenity Prayer, all times of emotion, disturbance, indecision, pause, ask for quiet, and say these words. And I did, 3 or 4. And what happened was my emotions calmed. I got back to a saner place where I didn't have to run the guy off the road. And I recognized that I could use a tool to go against something that was happening with me. I began using the Serenity Prayer as a tool, and what I began doing with having had the experience that it worked and knowing that it worked, I came to believe that something could restore me to sanity if it was just that prayer, those words, you know. And I did something different. I altered the action. I broke the chain of how Bill did stuff. And I was able to go further with that and recognize that if I monitored monitored what was going on here in the hell cube. That I monitored, and I didn't allow it to get into morbid reflection. I didn't allow it to get on riding your butt on anything, or blame you, or carry resentment. You know, resentiment. To feel something again. You know. If I do those things, if I monitor what's going on in the cube, and I use the tools that the drunks gave me to use, you have a good time when you're around me. I don't screw up your day, you know. and I get to live with myself, and I get to be comfortable inside my own skin, you know. He told me, Billy, you can't learn something you think you already know. So become teachable, you know. Get there. And I'll say this in closing. He went on a 2-man boat trip, 29-foot boat left out of Newport Harbor with one other guy, and they sailed around the world. And he said that, you know, on his watches out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with nothing around for 30 days, and just him and another guy, and the guy sleeping because they had to be on watch all the time. And he got to be real quiet, and he got to be with his God the whole time. And he got to reflect on what was going on. And he said he got so pure and so sweet and loving and kind inside himself. He wrote me a little card. He says, Billy, I love you. It's postmarked Tahiti, you know, sucker. And he says, I love you. And he said, because of this program, I'm now willing to forget everything I ever learned and just do this. Happy alcoholism. Thanks.